Hello, and welcome to End or N-Gauge Model Railway. I'm Jonathan. Recently, I've had a bad time with the running quality of tender locomotives made by Dapol. In this video, I share my experience and thoughts. First up is a British Railways 9F. I ordered it from the model centre and opted for them to apply light weathering, real coal in the tender, and fit sound. It generally ran smoothly, but then one day when I got it out from its box it was extremely lurchy, ground to a halt, and then wouldn't budge. This happened less than 2 months after receiving it, and after a total of maybe several hours of running. The model centre repaired it without fuss. I don't know what they did. I don't think it was quite as smooth running as before, but it worked well enough, for a bit. I guesstimate it had at most a total of 2 hours running over 3 months. This time it had been running acceptably, was brought to a stop and left on the track for maybe an hour whilst nobody played trains, then it wouldn't move anymore. So it broke with absolutely no interaction with it, whilst idle on continuously powered track. Sadly, it turns out I took almost no photos or videos of it whilst it was working. It's back with TMC again for another repair. Next up is A1 Flying Scotsman. I'm actually on my second one. The first one that arrived had shockingly bad running straight out of the box. I briefly ran it on DC, thought it was a bit bad and assumed it just needed running in, and proceeded to fit a DCC chip to it. On DCC I gave it more running, but it was clearly having significant trouble at certain points in the turn of its motion and getting stuck. I gave the motion light oiling at the locations given in the manual, but it didn't help. So I removed the DCC chip and sent the loco back for replacement. The second Flying Scotsman has worked, but only just enough for me to decide not to send it back. After plenty of running in, it's still not a smooth runner, has a noisy motor and has excessive wobble. I happened to see a second-hand one for sale recently on Hatton's that says it has excessive wobble, so I wonder if this is a common characteristic. The next loco is A4 Mallard. It seemed to run in just about okay on DC, though its motor is as noisy as Flying Scotsman's and it's far from being a smooth runner. A little bit after running in it started to have significant trouble, becoming very lurchy until eventually a tiny nut in the motion flew off and part of the motion started getting jammed at the valance. Fortunately, I found the nut. I spent a long time screwing the bits back on. Getting the nut back on with these bits of the motion in place was difficult, and after each time this little part of the motion continued to get jammed. Eventually it actually snapped, and at that point I decided to live without that part. I'm sure anyone familiar with the left-hand side motion of an A4 would notice this missing part, but I'm not super familiar with A4s, and so to me overall it still looks as I'd expect. I was already pretty fed up at this stage with returning malfunctioning locos, so decided that I could live with the state of this one. Its running hasn't got much better with time. It's still noisy, still not very smooth, and has noticeable wobble, though not nearly as bad as Flying Scotsman's. Finally, to the most recent loco, 7MT Britannia Firth of Clyde. It ran in forwards on DC just fine for half an hour. As with the A1 and A4, it had a pretty noisy motor and wasn't all that smooth running. Its backwards running in was awful. It was lurchy from the start, and after 15 minutes of running it was grinding to a halt, even though the power to the tracks hadn't changed. This was the final straw for me. I've had enough of faulty tender steam locos from Dapol, and decided that I'd return this one for a refund rather than replacement. I'm sad that I don't have a Britannia, because I think they look great, but I no longer trust that Dapol produce mechanically sound tender locomotives, at least not recently. So that's a brief summary of the failures. Have I just been unlucky? In total, excluding current pre-orders, I've paid for 6 tender steam locomotives. The other 2 are a Dapol GWR Hall class, a Graham Farish Castle class. Both of them run well. The 4 faulty or substandard purchases cover 5 locomotive models, because there have been 2 A1s. Of course the 9F has broken twice. I feel that for Dapol that's 5 out of 6 not working properly in some way, so I feel like that's way beyond just bad luck, and it's why I've lost confidence. I think it highlights an inherent quality issue. The A1, A4 and Britannia are all from 2012 tooling, so maybe there's some common flaw there, or with the way that the batches announced in 2022 have been made. The 9F is a bit more complicated to analyse because it has been modified by the model centre, but its first failure seemed like a mechanical one. Something that all 4 types of locomotive have in common are a complicated motion, so maybe there's a weakness there with the Dapol designs. For me, this hobby is only worthwhile if there are detailed, reliable models available. I'm not willing to pay the expensive prices for faulty products or be forever returning them. I'll say now that I think all 4 models, in pure looks, have been delightful. I'm perfectly happy with the level of detail that we get in N-Gage. I do actually have a Dapol GWR260 Mogul on pre-order. Those are going to be brand new tooling, so I'll take a chance on it, but I'm done buying locos with 2012 tooling. For all the wonderful, intricate detail that's present, I think there are also some glaring aesthetic issues with some Dapol models, so mechanical reliability isn't the only type of quality issue with Dapol products, in my opinion. But I've done enough complaining for now, and I'll cover those things in a different video another time. I'm particularly interested to know if other people have experienced running issues, specifically with Dapol steam tender locos. I haven't come across many issue comments in channels that I follow. I would have thought that if there was a widespread quality problem, then people would be returning their locos, but I've come across people deciding to investigate and do repairs themselves rather than returns, so I wonder if the issues are being hidden by that. Anyway, that's enough about that for now. I'll end on the positive note that 2 of my very favourite class of locomotive, the GWR Hall and Castle, are models that both work very well, so there's plenty of enjoyment still to be had. Bye bye for now.